Díagweave Macorja. I want to continue with the theme of Radical Chic, but this time moving across back to Ireland. And I want to make some comments on sort of international phenomenon. Some controversy has been kicked up in the last few weeks over an Irish hip-hop group called Kneecap. And I think they are a fantastic example of the modern interpretation, one of the modern iterations of so-called radical chic, or virtue signaling. Now, to be fair, Kneecap are three Northern Ireland rappers. I never thought the day would come where I would actually see such a thing. Actually, when there was one or two hip hop groups in Ireland back in the 90s, and they made no they made no traction whatsoever on the international stage, and not much in Ireland, to be honest. But these guys came on the scene in the last few years, and what's interesting about them, their unique selling point, I would say, is that they speak Irish. They speak Gaelic. Now, I prefer to use the word Irish because Gaelic it hasn't got neutral connotations, because even though the Irish language is a Gaelic language, it's one of three Gaelic languages. The other was and is spoken in the Isle of Man. It's there's a resurrection project there of the language, a restoration project, and it's still spoken natively in parts of Scotland, Scots Gaelic, and of course in Ireland, in pockets of Ireland, Irish or Irish Gaelic is spoken. And this is Kneecap's unique selling point, that they do their act in Irish, unless there's some sloganeering involved, free Palestine, etc., then that will inevitably be done in English. I haven't seen their act. I've seen pockets of it. I've seen small snippets of it on YouTube, and it seems to be decent enough to give them credit. But the problem with Kneecap for me is it's not so much their politics. It's the contrived nature of their act. They have this type of boilerplate routine that seems to be common to all hip-hop groups, or it's hip-hop and hip-hop artists. They tend to have a need or a requirement to be from the mean streets or the ghetto, or whatever way you want to call it. So, or whatever you want to call it. And I suppose this was something that's very obvious, yeah. And it became, I would say, in the 90s, it possibly became the overriding. I think if it was ever any different, it was the 90s that changed it in this direction. That's for sure. Now you always had these hip hop groups that had some sort of radical or political message. So if Public Enemy, for example, some of their tracks were called would have titles like "Fight the Power," it's stuff like this. And Kneecap are very much in this tradition. But what happened in the 90s, I think there was a pivot in that genre of music. So a subgenre emerged called gangster rap, and you had I don't know who would be the first, but I associate this with NWA and Snoop Dogg. There's there's endless artists that fall into this category. I used to be very fond of this style of music, but still am, I suppose. But yeah, you grow out of things, you know. So, but you have to have this sort of street credibility, and I think otherwise you're inauthentic. And it probably, I don't know if it started off. I don't know how this rap music itself where it exactly has its origins. I would think it has its origins in a combination of things. Probably it's apparently it's supposed to mean rhythm and poetry. I don't know how true that is, but it probably has some influences from as far back as the 60s maybe, but I think it came into itself in the late 70s. It probably is influenced by the disco scene as well. But when it first started arriving on Ireland shores was the same time it started arriving in England. I probably first saw it around the time, maybe a bit before the breakdance scene emerged, but you started to see these hip hop artists appear in Britain that were basically copying what was going on in America, and you had at one point, I think one of the people that helped popularise it in the UK was Malcolm. I think his name is Malcolm McLaren. I think he was the Sex Pistols manager, and he noticed this style of music over America, and he made at least one of his own records. I think he made two, more than one, and they reached charts in England, but they didn't have that. He was basically appropriating something that he saw in America. And Malcolm McLaren is a controversial figure. He was the manager of the Sex Pistols, and I don't think they liked him too much, or there was some sort of schism with him. I'm not familiar with that history at all, but that's an American muscle car just passed. But by the 90s, I mean, it was dominated by the gangster rap. The genre was dominated by gangster rap, with a few. I mean, there was very few exceptions. I mean, there was one guy called Guru. He was very good, I thought. He had this sort of radical sound, radical message in it, but it wasn't this violent and misogynistic lyric that you would find in the gangster rap videos. He wasn't glorifying murder or misogyny, or there was a few more, but it was completely dominated by gangster rap in the 90s. And there's also in my view, the hallmark of the rap scene is this contrived nature. I remember an interview with this guy Chuck D. He was in Public Enemy, and he hated gangster rap. And Public Enemy were very militant in their lyrics and stuff. But I remember him talking about gangster rap, and he just hated it. You know, he spoke about it like he hated it, and the word he used was contrived. And I would say that's a huge hallmark of rap music in general. You know. Because even Chuck D, Public Enemy, if you look at their backgrounds, they were quite privileged, you know. Even if they didn't have huge amounts of money, they were privileged enough to benefit from quite a good education, this type of thing. And you could see this as well with Death Row Records. If you look at the Death Row Records was the label that's associated with gangster rap, I think, or used to be more than anything else, more than any other label. And this guy, Suge Knight, who I don't know if he was the founder of Death Row Records, I think he might have been. He came from quite a middle class sort of background, black, like, okay, he's black, he's African American, but despite the rhetoric you hear coming out from America, there is a privileged class, there is a quite privileged class of black people, middle class black people, and he was one of them. I think his parents were kind of, I think one of his parents was a school teacher, I can't remember now, but I mean they weren't, he had the benefits of probably some sort of economic stability and family life, but he embraced this sort of culture, gangster culture, that contrived gangster culture that emerged in the 90s. And there were some other groups around that time that in the 90s, one was called Cypress Hill, and one was called House of Pain, and they had some association with each other. Cypress Hill, I think, there were some members of House of Pain may have been in Cypress Hill at one point, or they collaborated anyway sometimes, and also House of Pain, they had some association with very tenuous one with NWA. I think NWA were one of the members of House of Pain were in school with Ice Cube, and Ice Cube was one of the founding members of NWA. But the thing about House of Pain was that there was their shtick was that their hip hop shtick was that they were Irish American. And even when they were at the height of their popularity, it was like a dirty secret, not a dirty secret, but it was like an open secret that their connection to Ireland was very dubious, you know. They released this track called Jump Around, and it really leaned into this sense of Irishness that they said they had. And again, why would they do this? Again, it's this sort of gritty urban authenticity, you know. We have to come from the ghetto or the mean streets, you see. There was another guy done this less convincingly, a Canadian guy called I think his name was his moniker was Snow. That was his name, because he was white, you see. And he used to look like, he had these wire-framed glasses. He looked like Harry Potter. Yeah, he looked like the kid that gets bullied in school. But apparently he did have, and I think he had some Irish connection as well. That he claimed to be Irish too, I think, at some point. But he didn't have this black urban vibe about him. So again, he had to lean into this criminal past, which I think he might have actually had. I think he had been to prison and stuff like this. So he was actually, of the two groups, House of Pain and him, I think he looked less authentic, but even though he had this actual criminal history. Cypress Hill were a Hispanic group, but that's the hip hop tradition, right? And I was when I heard about Kneecap getting into trouble over their commentary. So Kneecap have been on the scene now for a few years. They're very young. Two of them are in their 20s, but one of them is not so young. He's approaching 40. He's 37 years of age or something like this, 36, 37. Which is not that old, but it is when it comes to timelines. And this is the problem. The Kneecap have this, seem to use their Irishness and the fact they're from Northern Ireland to build this gritty backstory, this urban ghetto backstory. And the problem is timelines for them. They come along with when they come along and refer to the troubles in their backstory, it doesn't add up. The troubles in Ireland lasted approximately this conflict started simmering around 1966. And that was a year of anniversaries in Ireland and the UK. So in the UK there was it was the 50th anniversary of the Battle of the Somme, where there was a huge loss of life by the British military in World War I. They had 60,000 casualties in one day, I think, at one point. The other thing that happened in 1916 was there was a rebellion in Dublin, a nationalist rebellion in Dublin, the 1916 Rising, it's referred to. So these two events started, some people, historians, pinpoint the 50th anniversary of these two events as sort of putting people on edge in Northern Ireland, because you had one side of the community, one side of the population, the nationalist side, the pro-Irish side, commemorating the rebellion against British rule in Ireland in 1916, and you had the pro-British unionist, loyalist side celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Battle of the Somme. And pardon me, I had to help my daughter again. So there was these two anniversaries in Northern Ireland, Ireland, the UK, the 50th anniversary of the rebellion against the British, that was celebrated by the nationalists in Northern Ireland and in Ireland as a whole, and the 50th anniversary of the Battle of the Somme, which was celebrated by Unionists, Loyalists in Northern Ireland. And it should be, the Battle of the Somme, there was the Ulster 36th Regiment was almost completely wiped out. And this is Ulster 36th Regiment was recruited, a large part of the membership were recruited from the UVF, the Ulster Volunteer Force, in prior to the outbreak of World War I. And the Ulster Volunteer Force were a loyalist militia in Northern Ireland that were established to resist Irish independence or home rule by violent means if necessary. So they were basically a terrorist group. So that's another reason why the 50th anniversary commemorations of the Battle of the Somme were close to the hearts of people in Northern Ireland. So the start of the Troubles, the conflict in Northern Ireland started simmering around 1916 or 1966, and then the violence actually broke out intensely in 1969. It reached its peak in the years from 1970, 71, 72, 73, started to taper off then in 74, and it continued up until approximately 1993. Now, it would take another 5 years of negotiations to come to a political settlement. But the first ceasefire, there was a period in the 70s where there was a ceasefire, and there was an attempt to find a political solution called Sunningdale, and it failed. This is the joy of making videos on your balcony. Yes, I apologise again, but I have two girls, and as you probably see, even out here, I can't. I have to. It's the middle-aged man's burden, I suppose. The middle-aged father's burden. But so the conflict in Ireland, in Northern Ireland, basically ended in approximately 1993. There was a ceasefire by the IRA, the Irish Republican Army. That was quickly followed by a ceasefire from the UVF and the UDA. Then a political process started. It ebbed and flowed, but that's basically in 1993 it ended. The IRA broke the ceasefire eventually because the British government, in particular, the British and Irish governments, the perception was that they were dragging their heels with the efforts to find a political solution. So the IRA broke the ceasefire, basically went back to war, and exploded a huge bomb in the financial district in London, in an area called Canary Wharf. You can Google this; it's interesting, and there's plenty of videos on YouTube about it. But the 1993 is when the ceasefire ended. 1993 is when the conflict ended. The IRA broke it in 1997, so that reignited it again briefly. Then, I can't remember. It was probably 1995 that they broke the ceasefire. And then what happened was there was a new government came in England, a Labour government, after wow, was it so long? After years of Tory rule, the Conservative Party were in power in England from 1979. I think 1997 a new government came in the UK, and the efforts at finding a political solution started again, and the IRA restored their ceasefire. So that's the history in a nutshell of the Northern Ireland conflict. And so if you're 36, so getting back to Kneecap, the problem for Kneecap is that 1998 was the Good Friday Agreement, where this officially put an end to the conflict, because now you had a political settlement that restored a parliament to Northern Ireland, restored devolution to Northern Ireland. So that meant that the 30th anniversary of that settlement will be in three years' time, in 2028. So you have to do the maths then. 30 years ago from this year is 1995, and 1989, add another 6 years. So the oldest member in Kneecap is was born around 1989. So he was probably 4 years old when the conflict ended. Because even though the IRA broke their ceasefire in 95 or whenever it was, it didn't reignite in the same way. It didn't totally unravel. So Kneecap have a credibility problem, especially when the two younger members are, I don't know, 26, even if they're 26, 28. I mean, the whole thing was over by the time they were even born. They didn't have the memory of, let's say, that I have. Even though I'm not from Northern Ireland, I remember growing up and seeing news reports of men being found with their brains blown out in country lanes. That men that were probably that were being accused of being, there were IRA members that were informing to the security services, to the police, and they were executed for their treachery. That was the official story. That was the reason given for their murder. And ironically, the guy that probably shot them was probably, or possibly, a man named Freddie Scappaticci, an Italian name. He was his parents or grandparents or somebody in his history was a migrant to Northern Ireland, but he had an Italian name, but he was an Irish nationalist, and he was the head of this group within the IRA, nicknamed the Nutting Squad, they were the internal security unit of the IRA, and they were the unit that investigated members of the IRA that were suspected of being informers. And Freddie Scappaticci himself was an informer. He was a British spy, and he was the one who was on charge of this, with the job of extracting confessions through torture from IRA members who were accused of being touts, which was the name for an informer. So I think that's a good place to bookmark this video and continue with another video. So, slán leat.